We continue now at the top of Daf Kuf Chav Zayin Amud Aleph in Meseches Bava Basra. This is Bava Basra Daf 127a. The Gemara in the previous summit was discussing a tumtum. A tumtum is an individual, when he's born, he has a piece of skin that is covering over the aver, so it's unclear whether it's a male or a female. And then later that skin is torn and it becomes clear that the individual is a male. So the question is, how do we apply certain halachas? And the Gemara now continues. Amemar says, Af eno memayit chelik bechora. This tumtum, he's not going to lessen that firstborn portion. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, v'yolda lo banim, it says that she gives birth to sons. Ad sheyehi ben b'shas leida, the individual has to be considered a son from the moment of birth. And when this tumtum was born, it was not clear whether he was a boy or a girl. And the Rashbam explains, Amemar says, Af eno memayit chelik bechora. He doesn't lessen the portion of the firstborn. Also, tumtum shenikra v'nimtza zachar, that tumtum that we're talking about, where the skin is torn and it turns out that he is male, imhu pashut ve'eno bechor, if that tumtum was just one of the regular brothers, he wasn't the firstborn. V'chol nichsei la'av tisha monim, and let's say, for example, the father had 9 portions as his property that he was bequeathing to his sons, v'hein shlosha bonim, and it's a total of 3 sons, bechor upashut v'tumtum, there's a firstborn, and then there's a regular brother, and then there's also this tumtum. So what do? Cholkem hanachasim tchila l'shlosha chalakim. What they do is, first they divide the property into 3 portions. Ki'ilu ein kan ki'im bechor upashut. We pretend as if there's only 2 brothers. There's only the bechor and the pashut. V'atumtum command lesse, and the tumtum is like he does not exist. This is in order to determine how large is that chelik of the bechora, that extra portion that goes to the firstborn. Umagia l'chelik habechor shisha monim. Now, if you divide in that fashion, the firstborn would get 6 out of the 9 portions. Shehin beis chalakim. That is 2 portions out of the 3 when we divided up the property. Lefisha bechor notel pishnayim bepashut, because the firstborn is going to take double from what the other brother takes. So nimsa, so it comes out that chelik bechora, the firstborn portion, meaning the extra portion that the bechor takes, shlosha monim, is actually 3 portions. We have now calculated 3 portions as the chelik bechora, and there are 6 remaining that now become divided among the 3 brothers. Chozrim v'cholkim hashisha monim hanusarim bein shloshtan. So now we go ahead and we divide the 6 remaining portions between the 3 brothers. Nimsa ha-bechor notel chamisha monim. It comes out the bechor takes a total of 5 portions, because when we divide the 6 portions by 3, that's 2 portions each. The bechor already got 3 portions as his chelik bechora, so he gets a total of 5. V'hatumtum v'hapashut noten kol echad shnei monim, and then the tumtum and the pashut, they each get 2 portions. And the Rashbam notes, if you wouldn't do it this way, avol ihave memai, let's say the tumtum would lessen the chelik bechora, meaning we would divide the 9 portions by 4. So if you divide the 9 portions by 4, it comes out to 2 1/4. So then lo haya notel habechor ela arba v'chatzi monim. Since each portion is 2 1/4, and the bechor gets 2 of those, that comes out to 4 1/2 as opposed to 5. That's what he would take. Pishnayim keneged kol echad, that would be double, corresponding to the other brothers. Now what Amemar is saying is that the tumtum doesn't lessen the chelik bechora, aval chelik pashut, but the chelik of the pashut, the regular portion that the bechor gets, certainly miha memayit mikulan, certainly the tumtum does count. He is memayit from all of them in terms of that portion, and that's why the way you make the calculation is you figure out first the chelik bechora as if there is no tumtum that came out in our example to 3 portions, then you divide the remaining, that's 2 portions each, going to each of the brothers. And the Gemara continues, Rav Shizvi says, Af eno nimo l'shmona, also this tumtum that we tear the skin, we later find that he's a male, he does not get bris milah on the 8th day. What that means to say is, normally, if a child gets a bris milah on the 8th day, it's docha Shabbos, but over here it's not going to be docha Shabbos. Diyamar kra, because the pasuk says, Isha ki sazriya v'yolda zachar, it says when a woman gives birth to a male, uvayom hashmini yimol, it says on the 8th day there's the bris milah again, and we learn out that bris milah is even docha Shabbos, but ad sheyeh zachar mishas leida, but that only applies to a male, that we know he was a male from the moment that he was born. And the Gemara continues, Rav Sharvia says, Af ein imo tamei leida, also his mother, talking about again the tumtum, where we tear the skin and we discover whether he's male or female, so the mother is not going to have tumas leida. Diyamar kra, because the pasuk says, Isha ki sazriya v'yolda zachar, it says if a woman gives birth to a male, v'tama shivas yamim, she has 7 days of tumah, ad sheyeh zachar mishas leida, we understand that to mean that he has to be clearly identified as a male from the time of the birth. And the Rashbam explains, Af ein imo tmeo leida shiva. We're talking here about the 7 days of tumah. This is talking about a male. If a woman gives birth to a male, there are 7 days of tumah, even if there's no blood. By a female, it's 14 days of tumah, even if there's no blood. So im nikra v'nimtza zachar, let's say the skin is torn, we find that as a male, she's not going to have those 7 days of tumah. V'gam lo shvuayim, and also she won't have the 14 days of tumah im nimtza nekeva. If it turns out that the baby is a female, it doesn't matter here whether male or female. The point is there is no tumah. There's no tumas leida at all. Because it's written in the pasuk v'yolda zachar v'tama. It says that if it's a male, she has this tumas leida. The same language is used by a female. V'tama shvuayim. It says then she has 2 weeks. She has 14 days of tumah. Yoledes tameahi. The idea over here is that a yoledes is generally tamei. Afal pisha eno ro adam, even though she doesn't see any blood. But again, that does not apply in this case of the tumtum. And the Gemara continues. Meisvei, we have a question from the following Mishnah in Meseches Nida Hamapelas Tumtum v'androgonus. Let's say a woman miscarries and the child is either a tumtum or an androgonus. Again, tumtum, there is skin covering the area. We can't tell whether it's a male or female. Androgonus is a child who has both the signs of a male and a female. So the halach is, according to the Mishnah, Teishev lazachar ulanakeva. She has to sit the days of tumah as a stringency for both male and female. The idea over here is there are stringencies if it's a female, that there are 14 days of tumah, as we said, and so she has to do 14 days of tumah, but there are also leniencies by a nekeva because there are 66 days that follow that are Yemei Tahara, whereas when it comes to a male, it's only 33 days that follow of Yemei Tahara. So we're saying that she has to act as if the child was a male in terms of the Yemei Tahara. There are fewer days of purity, but she has to be strict when it comes to the days of Tumah. That's what the Mishnah is saying. And so the Gemara says, Tiyufte de Rav Sharvia Tiyufte. This is a refutation, certainly a refutation of Rav Sharvia, because Rav Sharvia said that there's no Tumas Leida whatsoever when it comes to a Tumtum. And here we're saying she has to be strict and she has to sit an extra days when it comes to the Tumas Leida. And the Gemara continues, Lema Tiave Tiyufta de Rav Shizvi. Let us say that this is a refutation of Rav Shizvi as well. And the Rashbam explains, Lema Tiave Nami Tiyufta de Rav Shizvi. Let's say it's a refutation of Rav Shizvi. The Iyu Nami Dorish Le'inyan Mila, because when it came to Bris Mila, he made the same kind of drasha, Achi Zachar Mishas Leida, that it has to be a male from the time of birth. Otherwise, we say there's no halach of Mila on the 8th day, that it pushes off Shabbos. V'u'adin Lagabe Tumas Leida. The same should be true by Tumas Leida. Those halachas should be connected. V'ilu Haitana Choshev Le'zachar Le'inyan Tumas Leida to Katani Teshev Le'zachar. And if this Tana is saying that it's considered to be a male when it comes to Tumas Leida, because you have to sit the days of a male, so the same should be true when it comes to Bris Mila. And the Gemara continues, it's not necessarily a refutation of Rav Shizvi, because Tana Sfuke Mesafkale, because the Tana Meseches Nida, it's not that he's considering that this child is a male, he's considering it to be a doubt whether this child is a male or a female. That's why it says Teshev Le'zachar Ulanekeva Ulechumran. Essentially, the Mishnah is saying you always have to be strict, you have to apply all the stringencies, and Rav Shizvi might have been saying the same thing, because what is Rav Shizvi saying? Rav Shizvi is saying that the Bris Mila is not going to be Docha Shabbos, that is a stringency, because maybe it's not considered to be that the child is a male. But the Gemara continues, Ihachi, if so, if you're going to say that the Mishnah Meseches Nida is simply saying that we're stringent in all directions, so if you're going to be fully stringent, so Teishev Le'zachar Ulanekeva Ulanida Mibayle, it should say that she has to sit the days of Tumah as if this is a male, a female, and as if she's a Nida, because, as we said, by both a Zachar and a Keva, there is a certain leniency that there are days of Tahara, but maybe this should not be considered male or female at all, and maybe we should say that if she sees blood, she's considered to be like a Nida, so we should say Zachar, Nekeva, and Nida, there are no days of Yemei Tahara. And the Gemara says to that Kasha, the Gemara says indeed that is difficult, because it does seem that the Mishnah is trying to be stringent in all directions, so it should have mentioned Nida as well. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rava says, Tanya Kavasi de Rav Ami, we have a brisa that supports Rabbi Ami. Rabbi Ami was on the previous Amud. He said when we have a case of a tumtum shenikra, we say that tumtum shenikra, that we find out that it's a male, we say he does not get the portion of the Bechora if he happens to be a firstborn. The brisa says, Ben velo tumtum, Bechor velo safek. It says a son and not a tumtum, and a Bechor, a firstborn, and not one that it is a doubt whether he's a firstborn. And the Gemara says, Bishlama ben velo tumtum. I understand what the brisa means when it says a son, not a tumtum. Kid Rabbi Ami, that's exactly what Rabbi Ami said, that we say a tumtum shenikra is not going to be considered a firstborn in terms of getting the bechora, that extra portion, the double portion that a bechor gets. Ela bechor velo safek, but when it says in the brisa a bechor and not a safek, not in a situation of doubt, la'afuke mai, what is that coming to exclude? What are we saying that the bechor should have gotten, but since it's a safek, he does not get? And the Gemara says, la'afuke mi de darash Rava. The brisa is going against what Rava darshaned. The darash Rava, because Rava said said, Shtei nashim sheyaldu beis zacharim b'machave. Let's say you have two women, we're talking about two wives of the same husband, and they both give birth to males, and they're giving birth in an area in secret, and it's not known which one of the children is actually the firstborn to the father. So kosvin harsha zelazeh, they can write authorization one to the other. What that means is, let's say there are other sons, and so now both of these sons, these first two sons, we know that one of them is a bechor, we just don't know which one of them is the bechor. So what they do is they write authorizations one to the other. That way they can both, so to speak, together collect that extra portion of the firstborn. They'll split it between them because they know that one of them is the firstborn and not the other brothers. That's what Rava says, and the point is that the Brisa goes against that. The Brisa has a pasuk that says that they're not allowed to write a harsha one to the other. And the Gemara continues once it's on Rava's drasha. Amar le Rav Papa le-Rava. Rav Papa said to Rava, "V'hashalach Ravin," but Ravin sent a different halacha than the one that you just said. He said as follows: Davar zeh sha'alti l'chol rabosai. I asked this question to all of my rebbeim. V'lo amru li davar. They didn't answer me. B'ram kach amru. However, they said to me as follows: Mishum Reb Yanai. They said to me the following in the name of Reb Yanai. Hukru levasof nisarvu. Let's say they were identified. It was known which child was the bechor at first, but then they got mixed up. So in that case, kosvin harsha zelazeh. There they can write an authorization one to the other. That's okay. But lo hukru. But let's say there was no time at all where it was recognized. We never knew which child was the bechor. So then ein kosvin harsha zelazeh. Then already they're not allowed to write this authorization one to the other. Now when Rava heard this, so hadar uki Rava amora aleh. So then Rava, he set up an amora in order to say that the following halacha, to change what he had said before. V'darash, and he darshaned as follows. He publicized as follows: Dvarim shamarti lachem toes hein biyadi. What I said to you before was a mistake. Baram, however, kach amru mishum Rabbi Yanai. Here's what they say in the name of Rabbi Yanai: Hukru levasof nisaravu. If it was recognized who was the bechor, but later got mixed up, kosvin harsha zelazeh. So then they can write authorization one to the other. But lo hukru. But if it was not clear at all, even from the very outset, which one was bechor, ein kosvin harsha zelazeh, then they cannot write authorization one to the other. And the Rashbam explains, hukru b'shas leida, if it's recognized at the time of birth which one is the bechor, afagav de levasof nisarvu, even though at the end it gets mixed up, the havale bechor vaday sha'achas, there you certainly had a bechor for at least a moment. Ukra lo asalamute. So then we would say that pasuk in the Brisa, now we're bringing this teaching of Rava consistent with the Brisa. The pasuk would not exclude that case. Elamai de dami tfei lamute. The pasuk is only going to exclude a case which is more reasonable to exclude. Kagon de lo hukru klal. For example, let's say you have a situation where it was not clear even for one moment who was the bechor. The havale safek b'shas leida, that it's a doubt from the time of the birth at the very outset. To hachi mashma, because the Brisa and the pasuk would mean as follows: V'haya haben habechor sheyehei ben mishas leida. Again, the halacha of getting the extra portion of the firstborn is only if it is clearly a son at the time of birth. V'lo tumtum, and not a tumtum. And then in terms of our case, v'sheyehei bechor mishas havaya v'lo safek, it has to be clear that he's a bechor from the time that he was born, not that there is a doubt. And again, in a situation where there's a doubt from the very outset, that's where the pasuk comes along and says that they cannot write an authorization one to the other. And the Gemara continues, Shalchu le b'nei Akra diagma l'Shmuel. The people of Akra diagma, they sent Shmuel the following: Ilamdeinu Rabbeinu, teach us our Rebbe, hayu muchzaken bazeh shehu bechor. Let's say there's a chazaka, there's a presumption that a particular individual is the firstborn. V'yamar aviv al acher bechoru. But then the father comes along and says, no, there's actually another child that is really the firstborn. Mahu, what is the halacha? Shalach lu. So he sent to them kosvin harsha. They can write an authorization one to the other. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chav Zayin Amud Beis.